All right, well, I think we'll get started. We'll probably have a couple people come in late, like always. My name is Patrick Urbanski. I've been working at Chenard's for 3 seasons now, not, consecutively, but, here and there. Um, I go to OSU and I'm a horticulture major there. And I also work in a plant breeding lab on campus, known as the Ornamental Plant Breeding Program. We breed lots of different kinds of landscape plants and stuff like that that eventually will make their way into the industry where they can be planted in your yards and stuff like that. I'm really excited that you guys are here today. This class idea came from a really good friend of mine that I used to work with at a different garden center, actually. And she kind of, topped on this trend that kind of popped out of social media, Pinterest, all that kind of stuff. People started planting plants that looked better at night or that, could be enhanced at night. And so this class is going to be focusing on mostly plant selection and how to plant those in your yard to where you can spend more time outside and, see all these beautiful plants in the moonlight, especially, but as well as add things like fragrance, sound, and other elements to the garden where your site is normally reduced at night. I've got a big selection of shade, sun, perennials, annuals, trees, shrubs, all that kind of stuff. So, I have all different kinds of spaces, just, even planters, or your whole yard. It's kind of up to you on what you want to, how big you want to take this concept. But that's, what we're kind of covered today. Um, let's see here. Let's do that. Was like, there we go. All right, so I kind of want to start with just going over some plants from plant section. I'm not going to go over every single plant because I picked a lot of things to talk about. I'm just going to kind of pick three, I think, from each category. And if you guys have questions about any of the ones I talk about or the ones I don't talk about, feel free and ask me, and we can go over that as well. The first section that I have for plant selection is going to be perennials for sun and for shade. Um, I'll just go over the first one on the list here, Artemisia is a really, really cool plant. It's very fluffy. It's very soft. I did bring them in here today for us. They're kind of shrubby, but they're good in full sun. They're really silvery and nice. And then you'll see that's kind of a common theme here today. Really silvery blue foliage. That's what's going to reflect a lot of, of that moonlight at night, and other kind of low light and stuff. So this is a really, really fun plant. They get, they kind of clump, so they get larger over time. Um, and that's one that I really, really like. It's a great question, actually. Let's see. 36 inches tall and wide. So a couple feet. Yeah. So they get really nice and they get this really big kind of clump here. It's in these people. All right. The next plant I want to talk about is actually lavender. And obviously we know that lavender has a more silvery foliage. There's a specific cultivar that I really like called Silver Anook. It's a type of Spanish lavender. So it's got the funkier looking flowers with the little frilly things on top. But the foliage is super, super silver compared to, the more greeny lavender. So that is going to be something that is going to reflect the moon very well. The flowers, again, you'll get some more color in there. Like I said, a lot of the colors that we're going to focus on are creams, whites, blues, silver, and it's okay. I mean, some plants have more to offer if the flowers are pink, but the foliage could be, more of a yellow. So you just got to think about how it's going to be enhanced, in a different lighting. It doesn't have to just have white flowers for it to look good at night. It can be, pink flowers and it will have, different colored foliage and that'll add something to the area as well. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on with the lavender there. Another one that I really like is the Gara Silver Fountains. I brought those guys in. They're right next to that blue spruce, those kind of variegated tall ones. They are super cool. They have white flowers as well, so that will be enhanced at night. But they do kind of move in the wind. So I mean, adding that movement is going to be something that's going to be great in a moon garden, as well as the colors. So the foliage is going to have, some reflection. The flower is going to have some reflection. It's also loved by butterflies and hummingbirds, so that's a good option as well for perennials.
What was its name?
Gara Silver Fountains.
Okay.
It should be on your list on that back page there. I think it's right there too. Yeah, that's a good one as well. They're not as popular as I, expected them to be. I don't know if we've had them before, but we've had a couple of them this year. But I think that they're super cool. So that's something that I wanted to highlight as well.
Do they also get quite large?
They kind of top out about here. So another perennial probably about 36 to inches to 2 feet somewhere in there. Moving on to some shade perennials selection that we have here. I really love Brunnera. Brunnera is a silvery foliage plant. There's a couple on that table back there. They kind of look like the Lungularia. I can grab one and show you guys as well. It's kind of hard when I'm all the way over here. But this is Brunnera right here. They do have really silver foliage and they have tiny blue flowers as well. They, again, are perennial. They're super good. I gotta show our Zoom people too. They are super, super cool, super silver. There's a couple different varieties. This one's called Jack Frost. I think there's one called Silver Heart that's much more silver. There's no green veining in it. It's very bright silver, so that would reflect the light really well. This will also do it, but it's just got a little bit more texture in the leaves there. This one stays a bit smaller, probably only about this tall. It's also clumping, so it's good as a border plant in shade gardens and stuff like that. Let's see what else I have in here. Heuchera, I named a couple cultivars there. Stainless Steel, Glitter, and Georgia Peach are really good cultivars, but a lot of different Heuchera have, very similar veining like this, where it's really dark, purple or orange in between, and then a more silvery version of that color as the filler. So that's something that also is going to reflect moonlight, but add a different color and texture to your yard and your moon garden. So that's something that's really good for shade perennials as well. Let's see here. Black Mondo grass also is really, really fun. They are tiny, tiny little ground cover grasses. They, will kind of pop up around and they kind of spread and they're really kind of random, which is really fun. They don't really take over. They're not invasive or anything, but they have really black, dark foliage. And they also have little tiny white flowers. So at night, the little flowers look kind of like bells. And that's kind of the part that's going to reflect the moonlight, and the black leaves are going to add some contrast as well in your yard. So that's a good option as well. Let's see here. I always have to click my thing. So we did. All right. So I want to go over some annuals and some other tropical plants that are good. I have a picture of a Brugmansia up there. Now, Brugmansia they're kind of unassuming, especially when they're younger. It's just this greeny plant right here. There's two of them. This one right here. They don't look like much, but in one season they can get about 8 feet tall. They're really fun to have as a statement piece in your yard as an annual. They have these really beautiful, up to a foot long pendant flowers. There's yellow peach like in that picture, and there's a white one as well. I would recommend like the peach and the white one for the flowers. It's gonna, pop more at night than the yellow one is. But the other thing the reason why I included this plant is because it has such a strong fragrance at night. It is super, super citrusy, and it just floats through your yard, especially on the warmer evenings. If you have one of these in your yard that's blooming, you can pretty much smell it, within, 20 feet. It's crazy. They smell amazing. They do that to attract their pollinators, which is a moth, at night with a really, really long proboscis, or that tongue that they use to kind of get the nectar out. But this is something that really adds a good fragrance at night, which is why I included it in the class as well.
What was it?
Brugmansia. I think I have it up here somewhere. Maybe I don't. It's on your list. I know that for sure. It's Brugmansia, I think. And I don't know what cultivars there are. I don't know. The one we have, we only have one variety in stock. This one right here. It's insignians, but this is the tag for it. They're also called Angel's Trumpet.
Yeah.
That's an easier name to remember, Angel's Trumpet. They're not hardy here, unfortunately, but they do grow, like I said, huge in one single season. They can become a large bush. Yeah. If they're being fertilized regularly and they're in full sun, they can grow pretty big in one season. Another tropical that I kind of want to go over is caladiums. They're more of an elephant ear. That pink and white one with those ones, yeah, that right there. That's another annual. They're good for shade. They come in pinks, whites, greens. There's lots of different varieties of those. I picked that white one and the pink one because that's something that's really going to pop at night. So that's something that you can put. It's a good bedding plant, a good edger, because it's shorter and it's nice and bushy. So that's a really fun one as well. And then for a cool annual, I picked the night sky petunia, which I brought mine from home. But this blue one, let's see. This blue one with all the speckles is called Night Sky, which is kind of fun for the name, but it's also a good plant to have in pots. I kind of went for a night themed pot in here. But this is the night sky one is what I wanted to highlight there because it's really fun. They're called that obviously for the name because they look like stars. They smell really nicely as well. And they're just a really good animal to have. They kind of spread all over. And this is something that will really pop in your garden with the moon. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I brought in the glow in the dark petunia that was released this year, and it's in this pot. It's this white one right here, and we can look at that after class. I'll turn all the lights off. Um, I'll turn all the lights off, and we can look at it at the end. But it's really faint, and so you're gonna have to really look. But it's a new release from a biotech startup this year, so I got one just to try, to see what it would look like. And so that's what we'll look at that in the end too. I also have some other glow in the dark accessories that are good to have, that we'll talk about too. Alrighty, let's move on to our next selection here. Fragrant picks, like I said, I talked about Brugmansia. I might have put Brugmansia on this list. I did. Yeah. So that's a good one, obviously, to start with that. Star Jasmine, classic, fragrant plant. It smells good at all times of the day. It's also evergreen. So that'll keep, interest in your garden around. They've got those really nice star-shaped flowers like I have in the picture up here. And in summer, they can just get covered. Again, the fragrance at night can just carry. And it's a really great plant to have. The white will also reflect the light at night too. So that's a fun one for fragrance. I put honeysuckle on here, obviously, because they smell really good at night. There's a couple annuals, the begonia fragrant falls. I feel like that one kind of gets overlooked a lot, but we do have a couple fragrant begonias out in our greenhouse, and they come in peaches, yellows, whites, things that will reflect really well, and they smell great. Let's see what else I have on here. Oh, woolly thyme is something I want to talk about. People don't really think about, aromatic plants as much when we talk about fragrance stuff. But this is called woolly thyme. It's a ground cover. It's got a silvery foliage. It's hairy, so the hairs actually are gonna reflect that light, which is what we're going for. The leaves, if you step on it or if you kind of rub it with your fingers, it smells very very much like thyme. So if you're walking through the garden at night, and you kind of you're touching this or you're stepping on it, it's going to add another scent to the yard. And it's a great ground cover, and they do well in full sun. So that's a fun one to do as well.
So they are like a steppable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a ground cover. There's lots of different kinds of creeping thyme that you can get. But I highlighted this one just because of the foliage, and the smell as well. Alrighty. I think we're good on this one. Obviously, Daphne, I brought one of those in here, the Eternal Fragrance. There's a variegated variety that we just got in yesterday, but they smell great. There's one on that back table over there that I can show you. It's got those little white flowers kind of. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So that one smells really good as well. Another one that will carry at night, and it's got those white flowers. I can show those in people in a little bit, that one as well.
And does that just bloom in the early spring?
It blooms in the spring, and then it kind of throws flowers all summer. It's more of a summer bloomer, yeah. Other Daphne varieties, like the winter blooming Daphne, would be a good one to add too. I just didn't bring any in here because they're not blooming right now, but they do bloom in February. And so they've got a really citrusy smell. The variegated ones are yellow and white and green variegated leaves. So that one would be really fun to have in your moon garden. It would pop really well. And then you get that really fragrant flower as well. I prefer the winter blooming one for the smell. It's much more citrusy, where the eternal fragrance that we have is much more of a sweet, perfumey one. They both smell great, but I like the Odora a little bit better. I also brought this in here. It can be a house plant, or it can be planted as an annual outside, or you can, bring it in and out from the cold. It's called an Arabian jasmine. They smell super, super strong. And they've got tiny little white flowers, kind of like the star jasmine as well. But they smell amazing, and they're really fun to have as well because they increase their fragrance at night as well for the moth pollinators. All right, let's see what we've got here. So the design aspect is going to be kind of interesting to think about here. So, this is going to be suggestions. I want you to take what I say with a grain of salt. If you don't like what I say, you don't have to do it. This is for you to create. I'm just going to try and give you guys a couple ideas, stuff like that. So I want to talk about accessories first. Now, a lot of people don't think, at least me, I don't know. I've always kind of been like, I don't need any, sculptures or art, or, I'm just going to plant the plants, spend my time focusing on the plants. But, adding these little extra, pots or decorations in your yard actually can tie everything together really quite nicely. Um, a thing that people don't really tend to think about a lot is like gazing balls or those glass balls. I brought a couple gazing balls in here. They're those blue reflective ones right there. Um, the blue, like I said, will kind of reflect light at night really well. We have other colors as well, and we also have some like mosaic-y ones out there. They are all on sale right now. They're all like 25% off, or I think that they're all like $10 off their original price. So that's awesome. But I brought a couple of those in here because adding those in your yard is going to break up the monotony of the plants, and it's going to tie stuff in a little bit better. So gazing balls are a really good option. Like I said, glass art in blue, green, white, cream, anything that's going to be kind of more of a muted color, like a pale pink or a pale yellow. Those are going to reflect light the best at night. So adding accent pieces in the yard that look like that with that kind of color scheme is really going to be helpful in getting the overall kind of glow from your garden. Um, we don't sell crystals here, unfortunately. My manager loves crystals, and I don't know why we don't sell them. But adding crystals in your yard actually can be super cool and super, reflective at night. That's another thing that'll kind of break up the green and the plant kind of aspect of your yard. Make sure you use crystals that are not going to disintegrate though in the rain and the water. Stuff like quartz, amethyst, things like that are going to be great for that kind of thing. You don't want to, I mean, it depends also if you're doing pots, smaller crystals would work. I wouldn't suggest doing smaller crystals in the yard because you might lose them. So something like that is something to think about that you guys can kind of play with. Um, Moon themed, chimes, yard art like that moon with the kind of globe in it. Stuff like that is gonna just, tie it all together. It's gonna, put meaning to your theme. Someone comes in and sees all this beautiful selection of plants. They're not gonna necessarily know, especially during the day, what you're trying to do. But if you have, a couple moon themed things in there, it's gonna really tie your theme together, which is great. Um, we do have some really fun glow in the dark yard art. I put a couple in there. That little star and the little moon thing, those green balls will glow in the dark. And I also have some mini ones up here that I can show you guys with bugs. There's like dragonflies and butterflies and a little ladybug. But this circle will glow green at night. So it's really light and it's just going to add a little bit more kind of interest to your garden at night. So those are really fun. When we turn the lights off to look at the petunia, we can see those too because they'll glow as well. Um, so just, I mean, it's not every place, and we're not gonna have, this selection of stuff year round. It's gonna be something that I would suggest, working on over time. You don't have, I mean, get a couple things, that you want when you see them, but don't, force yourself to like really just go in all the way right away. It's gonna be kind of a work in progress, and it's gonna be more fun that way. Um, I do want to talk about like supplemental lighting as well. Um, I think that lighting can be difficult because if you have these really bright spotlights in your yard, like we tend to have, where we'll light up a big tree as a focal point, it's going to kind of swallow up the smaller plants, and you're going to lose the glow from a lot of these plants that you're choosing to put in your yard. So what I would suggest is doing some smaller kind of much dimmer lights. Twinkle lights, lights in the shapes, circles, stuff like that. I think little small pathway lights are, good as well, but you don't want to really light up the whole garden like a lot of people tend to do with the, bigger landscapes. It's you're gonna lose the glow from the plants just because these plants, it's not going to be something that's, super bright. It's not gonna be able to compete with with the supplemental lighting. So adding, small little accents like the glow in the dark pieces or, little pathway lights are going to enhance it, but it's not going to swallow up what you put in the yard. Let's see here. For other design suggestions, I do have I made a Pinterest board actually for us to kind of look at. And then you guys can look it up or I can send it to you after the class if you're interested in that, but that's what it's called. I kind of picked a couple things that I thought were really fun in that area. You can see in the top right there, they have a Brunnera, which is what we looked at earlier, this one. So that's what it looks like kind of in the landscape. And they did a really cool job adding that chartreuse in there to get the contrast. Chartreusey plants are going to glow more at night as well. So the silver and the chartreuse together with that dark plant in the back is going to be something that's really cool at night. And it's going to have a really fun contrast. For hardscape ideas, looking for, rounded edges, circular plantings and circular installations are gonna, again, like I said, tie the theme together. I thought these moon stepping stones were super cool right there. They've got like the moon phases on them. And they're just those normal concrete stepping stones that you can find at Home Depot. So you could do that yourself with a stain, actually, if you just bought those and then stained it that way. So that's something to consider as well. Really easy DIY. The circular lights up there and kind of right above the Garden Glow tag, I thought were really fun as well. They're not overpowering, but they are going to kind of, guide your eyes kind of around the yard at different plants and different things that you want to highlight. So something like that would be cool. What I do also want to talk about is other senses besides sight, because obviously sight's going to be reduced at night. That's why we're planting silvery white, flowers and foliage. Adding things for your ears, adding things for your nose is going to really, want you to, invite you into the garden a lot more. So what I would suggest is adding, a water feature, which is really easy to do. A lot of people think that it's really expensive, but you can go to Home Depot or here even and buy like one of those wine barrels, or you can buy a pot with no hole in it, and then you can get a little pond pump that just plugs in, or a solar powered pump that you would just turn on at night. It'll charge during the day, and then you can turn it on when you're out there. And that's going to add another sound aspect to the yard. So it's going to be running water is going to be relaxing with the fragrance of plants. It's going to add a whole nother level of kind of a sensory experience. Sound is also something that you can add very nicely. There's a couple of plants that I brought in here, mostly because they make a really fun, noise in the wind. This Japanese forest grass here, a lot of people will plant these in large swaths. As the wind blows through them, they make like this kind of rattling noise.
There's the chartreuse again.
In the chartreuse, it's also chartreuse. I'm showing the Zoom people here. But as the wind blows through it, especially in a larger planting, it makes quite a lot of noise, surprisingly. So adding something in your yard that's going to make noise is going to make the experience a little bit more involved for you because you're not seeing as much. So that's something to consider as well. The Japanese forest grass is a good one to do that. Miscanthus morning light is also a really good grass variety. It gets a lot bigger if you're looking for a bigger grass. It's got white and green stripes, and they've got really, really thin, kind of tough blades. So as the wind blows through it, it makes a very similar noise. So something like that, bigger spaces too. Obviously, if you're doing a whole garden, larger trees will do that. Quaking aspen actually has got those silver undersides, and they're known for the noise. And so adding that could be something that would be fun if you have enough space to do that. So, thinking about more than outside of sight, because we have a plant list to look at. You have the site kind of figured out. You know what color scheme you're going to go for. But adding noise elements and fragrance elements are going to be really important in kind of making this garden more enjoyable for you. I also want to suggest, adding a sitting area for you because, the whole point of this is to, enjoy it at night. So either being able to walk through it, sit and kind of, enjoy a glass of wine maybe as the sun goes down and the moon comes out. Adding furniture or a sitting area or something similar is going to make this, much more enjoyable for you. I would suggest going with darker furniture. I've seen people do white furniture. White furniture, obviously, is going to be really hard to keep clean. Second of all, it's also going to glow with the plants. And so, I mean, if you want to highlight the furniture in your garden, you can go with lighter colored furniture, but also if you're looking to see the plants more, I would go with a darker colored furniture. Even just a little mini like black or brown bistro set, set amongst the garden is going to be something that is going to help you be able to enjoy this a lot more. Let's see what else I've got in the notes here. I said this a little bit earlier, but avoid straight lines and sharp corners. Round and circular shapes will kind of tie the garden together a little bit more. It'll make it much nicer to walk through. It'll be kind of a flowing, walk through it. And it's going to blur the lines together, and adding large swaths of stuff like the Japanese forest grass as a border or the Brunnera is going to kind of help you kind of follow through the garden. It's also going to add that sound effect, which is great. Rounded arbors and rounded gates or rounded structures are kind of fun if you get that far. Like I said, none of this has to happen, right away for you to have a moon garden, but it's kind of things to think about if you've got enough space for it to kind of expand out. So that's something to consider as well. I would suggest planting in a thicker, closer density than you would, another perennial garden or something like that. It's gonna make the plants pop that much more. amongst each other because we tried to pick colors that are going to contrast really well with each other as well as reflect the moonlight. So having a kind of thicker planting density is going to help you achieve a nicer, more full look quicker. Um, like I said, flowers and foliage do not need to be just silver or white. Blues, greens, grays, pale pinks, all tend to show up pretty nicely with the subtle, light of the moon or any artificial lighting that you might have in the yard. Um, I was talking about the variegated winter blooming daphne earlier. I would try and pick some stuff that's going to be evergreen, like some conifers or the star jasmine or the daphne. Pick some stuff that's going to flower out of season in the winter. So that it's enjoyable for you at all times of the year, even if you're not really going to spend as much time outside as you would in the summer. There's still going to be something for you to look at, especially on those winter nights that are, happen to be clear for us here. It's rare, but it'll be something that still pops for you in your yard and make it that much more enjoyable throughout the year. Let's see here. So, I mentioned my glow in the dark petunia. It's this from this company called Light Bio. Um, I wasn't really sure if it was a scam or not originally because it sounds kind of weird. And so I did some research and I decided to order one as a test, to see if it actually did glow in the dark. And they do. They do glow in the dark. It's very, very light. It's a very green glow. It's bioluminescence. What they did is they took DNA from a fungus that glows naturally and they put it into the petunia with CRISPR, which is a whole another conversation. But and so that's what it does. It glows green. It's really interesting. The older flowers don't really glow. They kind of lose their glow as they open up. So the buds are going to glow the brightest, while the open flowers are going to not really glow that much at all, is what I found out. It's kind of a fun little experiment. Like I said, there's lots of interesting trends. The moon garden thing was actually a trend a couple of years ago, so much so that Martha Stewart had a whole issue about it and stuff like that. But it's really a fun concept to do. And it's, the whole idea is so that you can enjoy your yard and your outdoor space at all times of the day and not just, in the evening or in the morning when it's not hot. So it just adds a whole nother kind of aspect and more space for you to kind of enjoy yourself and relax. So that's the whole point of this, really, and I hope that that's what you guys kind of get out of it. I also want to talk about variegation. We've talked about a couple of plants that have variegation, like the Gara, the silver fountains over there. Some of our hostas that we have on the list on the handout, like Patriot, are going to have those variegated edge leaves. The Adora, the Daphne Adora that I talked about earlier, is going to be variegated as well. Um, the variegation is great for this kind of idea, for this kind of concept. The white and the green on top of each other is going to add a really cool contrast for us. And the white's going to reflect obviously at night, and the cream is going to reflect obviously at night. Variegation is an interesting thing. It's usually a genetic mutation that's found. People can either induce variegation artificially, or sometimes it occurs naturally just from a random genetic mutation on a plant. Like if this plant started popping out variegated growth, they could take a cutting of it and then produce it over time. And that's kind of how a lot of variegated plants get started. Is you'll find a sport is what it's called, and they'll multiply it. And it's just in the tissues of the plant. There's 3 different levels, and so as they will mutate, it'll kind of reproduce in that level if it's in the right tissue level. So variegation is really interesting. Artificially inducing variegation isn't really my favorite thing. Sometimes they can do it with a chemical, and it kind of will, like I said, will mutate the plant, and then it will shoot out variegation. If you guys know what a philodendron Birkin is, it's a green philodendron normally with big leaves, and they've kind of treated it with this chemical that they will then sorry, there's a fire right here. The chemical makes the plant a lot smaller, and it makes these white streaks in the leaves there. So that's kind of an interesting sort of idea. I'm not really into chemically inducing that kind of stuff. A lot of people will also, like I know in my program that I work for, the breeding program, they will blast like seeds with radiation and small amounts of radiation to mutate the plant, just to get a different gene bank for us. And sometimes we do get variegated plants from that as well, and they look really cool. So there's lots of different ways that variegation can kind of pop up naturally or not. And I just kind of wanted to talk about that so you guys kind of knew how that happens. Variegation tends to be a bit more sensitive in the sun, especially the more like, straight up all white leaves and stuff like that. They can burn really easily. The Gara and stuff, because it's so thin and it's a nice little touch, it's not really going to burn. It's not if there's not enough white in there to kind of get burnt like that. The caladium that we talked about as well is more shade, obviously, because it could get burnt pretty easily because of the really sensitive leaves. All right. I think I've got one or two more slides here to go over, and then we can kind of look at some of the stuff that glows in the dark because that's fun. Um, Planting a lot of these plants is going to be very similar to planting plants if you guys have planted before outside. Um, some basic stuff, I would plant the plant around the same height or a little bit higher than the pot that it's already in because plants do tend to sink a little bit, not much higher, just, a little bit. So on the same level is great. And then 2 times the width of the pot is going to give the plant the best rooting area. It's going to loosen the soil up and make it establish a little bit faster. I would suggest mixing in either some planting compost, or our soil building conditioner if you've got more clay soils. The clay will be broken up with our soil building conditioner, and mixing that together and then backfilling the hole with the mixture is going to be the best way to kind of help your plant get nutrients that it needs and get it established. I brought some fertilizer in here as well. We sell a starter fertilizer as well as all-purpose and bud and bloom. All three of these would be great. Starter is good for new plantings. Over time, though, the G&B all-purpose, seasonally, you would just kind of sprinkle that near the bottom of the plant there because it's granular, and then water it in. Bud and bloom is great to plant with annuals. I put a bunch in here before I planted this, and then I planted it kind of on top of the fertilizer. You just mix it in with the soil. This is great for any flowering plants, perennials, annuals, stuff like that. So that's super helpful as well. It's going to get your plants to their full potential. These petunias are they're going crazy. And I do fertilize them pretty frequently with a liquid fertilizer as well. So that really helps kind of get them to keep blooming throughout the whole season. They're using so much energy on flowering. A lot of our flowering plants are so focused on putting energy into their flowers that if it's not replenished, you're gonna see a reduction in the flowers over time. So fertilizer is really important. When you take the plant out of the pot, you want to rough up the roots a little bit. You don't want to go crazy, but just enough to kind of get the roots out of there, especially if they're circling the pot, get them out of the circle of death is what we call it. Because once you plant that in the ground, if you don't rough them up enough, they'll actually just continue to circle. And so they won't, and they're not going to expand out. So you're not going to have a mature plant. It's going to be stuck in that pot, even though it's out of it. So kind of disturbing the roots a little bit is going to give the plant enough room to kind of push its roots out into the ground, which is what you want. So that'll kind of help you get your plants established and looking much more full over time and more mature. Here in Oregon, we have a beautiful climate. It's beautiful summers. Unfortunately, it's a perfect climate for lots of fungus and pests. They love it too. And so aphids, spider mites, other normal bugs that we get, budworm, especially on petunias and other flowering plants, super common in the summertime. We have lots of products here, that are organic or not organic, to help you treat those things. Budworm, we're going to start seeing it here pretty soon as the weather warms up. Captain Jack's is a beneficial bacteria that the caterpillar will eat, and then it kind of kills them that way. So that's really helpful. We have a couple of different sprays and drenches for other larger issues like spider mites and aphids. So that's something to consider. Just make sure you check your plants for damage, routinely, just so you can kind of help keep pests out of there. If you have a nice established garden, you tend to attract predators as well, bug predators like ladybugs and other natural things that are going to help you keep your garden healthier. So that's something to kind of work towards, because you're not going to have to use as much spray. You're not going to have to worry about pests as much. So kind of creating a thicker planting is going to create a safer habitat for birds and other bugs like that. It's going to help you create a bigger ecosystem, and that's going to kind of help keep your pests in check over time. So that's something to consider as well. We also sell ladybugs here if you're interested in that. It's kind of a fun thing to do. They're really popular. We sell out pretty frequently, and then we have a lot of wish lists for them. But we just got a big shipment in this week, so that's really fun. If you do buy ladybugs, make sure you kind of spray the plants down, and I would release them in the morning or in the evening. That'll kind of keep them from flying away right away. It'll help them kind of get into the garden and then find any target pests that you have. If it's hot out, they tend to just kind of take off. So in the evening especially is the best time, I would say, after watering the plants. They're going to be thirsty, so that's why we water the plants first on the foliage. And it helps them get water, and then they'll stick around a little bit longer. And ideally, you want them to stick around enough to have baby ladybugs so that the cycle keeps going. So baby ladybugs also do not look anything like normal ladybugs. They're long and they're black and yellow spotted, and they've got kind of these weird little legs, and they're called alligators. So look out for those. Those are baby ladybugs, and they eat more than the adult ladybugs actually. So they're really beneficial to have in your yard. Um, so that's something that you can do as well. Let's see what else here. Oh, I'll talk about some fungus too. I know I just said to water your plants and leaves when you're releasing ladybugs, but don't do that for the rest of the season. That is going to encourage fungus issues. A lot of our trees and shrubs here get, shot hole or powdery mildew, other really common funguses. We have like a broadcast spray that you would just spray your plants with, and it's a fungicide, a preventative fungicide. So it's going to kind of stay on the leaves and prevent any spores from germinating on the leaves, which is really helpful. So if you have an issue, it's not really a huge issue here with a lot of our perennials, and a lot of new varieties coming out are very disease resistant, which is great. But there are some plants that you still will see that kind of stuff on. So just spot treating it as you see it is going to be really helpful. Like I said, throughout the growing season, continuing to fertilize with a liquid and a granular fertilizer is helpful, especially for a lot of flowering plants. Mulching with a compost or just with like even a bark mulch is going to be really helpful, especially in our summer months here. It'll keep the weeds down, and it's also going to help your plants stay nice and wet on our really hot days. Mulching will it acts as a blanket sort of. So even in the wintertime, it'll kind of keep your plants warmer, and in the summertime, it'll keep your plants cooler and wet. So you're not watering as much, and the watering stress doesn't kind of get overbearing on some of your plants. As you're planting a lot of our perennials, you're going to have to water the first couple of years pretty good to get them established. A lot of our perennials here, like the Russian shades that I brought in, the Senecio, a couple other things, are going to become drought tolerant over time. So they're not going to need as much water. And then some of our other stuff, like the penstemon and flowering, all the annuals are going to need water all the time, obviously. So just make sure, if you want to go more one way, if you're fine watering all the time, versus if you're not, you would kind of go with some drought tolerant stuff. A lot of our lists that we have will overlap. I think we have a drought tolerant list on our website and also out in the garden center. So you can kind of compare the two and see what overlaps, or even just go out yourself and see, okay, what kind of has the color schemes that I want that's in our drought tolerant section or something similar to that. This list, like I said, is meant to be a starting point, but I don't want it to confine you guys to just this, list. There's lots of other plants that we have out there. I just kind of made a quick thing of what we had in stock and some other ones that I really like that we might not have right now, to kind of share with you guys today. I think that's honestly about all I have to talk about. If you guys have any questions, and if not, I'll turn off all the lights and we can look at some of our glow in the dark stuff. Okay, perfect. It's gonna be a second here, but I might have to turn off the TV too. Let's see here. Alrighty, so if you look on the left, or my left over there, our glow in the darks, little yard art is glowing, which is fun. And we have these little, yeah, we have these mini ones up here. You can see that they're glowing as well. I'll show them to some people too. I know you can't really see it because the computer's so bright over here. But let's see if I can take this down a little bit. See if I can turn off the monitor. Oh, that's okay. I'll bring this guy out more of you guys over here. They're kind of hard to see, but like this one right here, you can see the bud really kind of glowing a lot more. We can unplug those too if you want to see. Let me see if I can get the computer to turn on. Because that's kind of gonna be our biggest thing. Unplug. Okay. You can kind of see it now. Here at my feet, it's a little bit better. You can kind of see the different buds and they're glowing. Here? I'll come back here for you.
Thank you.
Let me put that. Sorry, it's just like not the best situation here for this. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that is really kind of fun. Yeah, so that's an interesting new little thing. It was really expensive. It was like $30 for the plant, and then like another 30 for the shipping. So it was just a fun experiment for me. For our Zoom people, I think I can find a picture of it on my phone. And yes, well, we will have handouts in our nursery that you guys can pick up, and we can also probably post it on our website for you too. But other than that, I think that's all I have to talk about today. So thank you all for coming. If you guys have any questions, everything on that table is for sale. If you have any, if you want to, purchase something, please let me know. And thank you for joining us on Zoom. I know it's kind of hard to show everyone on Zoom what the glow in the dark ones look like. Let me see if I can find a picture because I do have one somewhere.
What are these ones?
I forget what that's called. It's a really common petunia variety that we sell here. I don't know if we have any in stock right now, but I can probably look it up for you in a second. Let's see here. If not, my manager will also probably know. Okay, we only have one person left on Zoom, but this is what it looks like at night. So, yeah. All right. Thanks for coming, you guys.
Yeah, thank you. It was